that was the biggest aha for me, was like, the number one way to enable your sales team is to get that tribal knowledge out of your veterans' brains and distribute it into the rookies' brains as fast and as powerful.
If you want to be a more effective salesperson or a more effective sales manager, you are in the right place. My name is Ethan Beute. I host the CX series here on the B2B Growth Show, and I'm the Chief Evangelist at BombBomb. Our guest is the VP of Sales at Chorus, Joe Caprio. Great guy, great energy, and above all, great insights, practical stuff about sales enablement, sales readiness, training, coaching, managing, and so much more. If you're in sales, you're going to love this conversation. And if you're adjacent to sales, it's important for you to hear it. Here's the conversation with Joe Caprio. From sales enablement to sales readiness, how do we best prepare our salespeople? How do we set them up not just for success against quota, but to best serve our customers? That's the topic on this episode of the podcast. Our guest has spent 15 years in a variety of sales roles in Boston and San Francisco, bi-coastal. Before becoming VP of Sales for Chorus, he was a delighted Chorus customer. I had the privilege of spending some time with him at an Outreach Unleash event a couple months back, and I'm excited to reconnect with him here today. Joe Caprio, welcome to the Customer Experience Podcast.
Ethan, thank you so much for having me. I could return all the same compliments to you. I've had a really enjoyable time every time we've spoke, so I'm thrilled to be here.
Cool. Let's start with where we always start on the show, which is your thoughts or your definition or characteristics of customer experience. How do you think about it?
Sure. Customer experience for me, I think, is really, really morphed and started to encompass the entire journey. And so I think a lot of us are now thinking about the customer experience from the first brand impression they get all the way through, the sales cycle, right into deployment and making sure you're deeply embedded and being used properly and expanding and renewing because you earned it. And so I really think of customer experience as just every single customer-facing asset and employee on your team marching to the same tune with a unified message and a mission to help your customers succeed in their business, not just with your tech.
It's a great answer. You covered a lot of really important elements there. One, you mentioned brand. And so this brand experience, customer experience, I'm hearing used synonymously. It's end-to-end. It's start to finish and impact and renewed impact. It's your people and your assets. You just really covered a lot of ground there. And you're right on. I agree with you. For those who aren't familiar, can you share a little bit about Chorus? Who are your ideal customers? Who are you serving? How are you serving those folks?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, our target customers, to be really gross about it, are high growth, rapidly scaling B2B sales teams. We work with some really cutting edge technology like BombBomb. We also work with some like massive $100 million funded or publicly traded companies like DataRobot and Klaviyo. We enable them, specifically their sales enablement and training programs, to get their reps field ready faster. So we support Qualtrics University, Adobe Sales Academy, and essentially we're an intelligence product that joins your sales meetings, captures what happened, what worked or didn't work, and then turn that into inspection points for managers, like activity reminders for reps, and ultimately like the best training program that you can ever put your people through is giving them an ability to listen to your top performers and learn from how they go to market. So we are an intelligence platform and a training platform for rapid growth tech.
It's great. It really changed the way our sales management works with and trains our salespeople. And we get great feedback from everyone that uses it in a variety of ways. So love what you all are up to. One of the fun things when I met you, one of my favorite things that stuck with me right away was that you were a Chorus customer before you became the VP of sales. What was it about the company or the product or the customer experience they were delivering for you as a customer? Like, what made you say, I got to join this team?
Yeah, I tell this story a lot, as you could imagine, right? But yeah, I was a customer. So I ran the training and enablement program at a company called Insight Squared back in Boston. And, we had a skill gap. We lacked consistency of message, and we would hire folks right out of college and try to get them, ready to sell BI, which is a really complicated, intense product. And you need to be a little more worldly than folks that are right out of college. And so we had a skill gap. I bought Chorus. I deployed it into my sales team. And then I used it for the last year that I was at Insight Squared. And I cut my ramp time in half. Real talk. I cut my ramp time in half. I increased my win rate while doing that. So I was getting people to a higher win rate in less time. I improved consistency of messaging. I got handoffs figured out so that our AE team was enabling our customer team with the right, needs from a customer. And it worked. And so my wife kind of makes fun of me where she says, you stayed at Insight Squared for 6 years. And when you finally left, you went and took like 10 different interviews, but I knew you were going to Chorus the whole time because for the last year, you come home every day and you're like, oh, the other cool thing that Chorus does for me. So, a lot of people tell the story, but it's real with me. Like I was a very, very happy customer of the software. And I just love what we do. I love enablement. I love training. My dopamine doesn't come from closing deals. It comes from enabling new salespeople to learn how to close deals. And so I love the mission that we're on right now of helping our customers support their sellers with better training and enablement.
It's really good. You mentioned something there and you used worldly as a phrase. The phrase that I've been thinking and using as I think about our own team members in a variety of positions, not just in sales, is like, how do we raise the business acumen, right? As we start to go up market and work with more sophisticated people with more at stake. And so just close that gap for me a little bit. Like, how did you use Chorus at Insight Squared to make those folks more worldly? Like, what were you looking for or listening for and then feeding back to them? Like, how did you raise up the business acumen of these young folks who obviously had an important job, a complex sale maybe? How did you do that? And how did the tech help you do that?
Yeah, it's really funny. I have a really good friend named Mark Cosaglo, who's the head of sales at Outreach. And I think about the first time that I bought that product and what it did for my sales team. It really enabled my rookie BDRs to send the emails that my veteran BDRs were sending. And so folks that had a year or a year and a half in the seat had figured out what worked and what resonated and what the prospects liked to talk about. And then every new hire that I had would try to figure it out on their own. And by taking the templates from a veteran BDR and giving them to the rookie BDR, they still might not be great on the phone yet, but man, those emails were tight. You start to play that out on the rest of your sales and support motion. And it's like your veterans have figured out a way to really nail this project. And the faster you can get your rookies to pick up what's working and what's not working, the faster you can get them to mimic the veterans. And so you start really thinking about like, what are the 10 key skills that a person, a seller or a supporter needs at your company? And how can I create really powerful lists of good examples of those skills? So it's no longer lecture and role play. It's actually watching real interactions that, moments that made an impact and then copying that down into your own skill set. So that was the biggest aha for me, was like, the number one way to enable your sales team is to get that tribal knowledge out of your veterans' brains and distribute it into the rookies' brains as fast and as powerful.
So good. And so it's like the game tape, like we're going to go back. This is a game from 1996. And you could, anyway.
You can't cheat the man in the glass. You can't lie to the mirror.
Right. Or 2016 or whatever. Yeah. So you are hardcore about buyer persona, which I really respect the way you go at it. You're focusing for a bit on biz ops and rev ops, sales enablement. Talk about your approach to buyer persona. Like, what is that? Why does it matter to you so much? I mean, I think it's implied, but I'd love to hear it in your own words. And then what are you doing practically to really steep yourself in who your buyer is and how they live and work and think?
Yeah. So I don't care about your features. I really don't. I don't care about your technology, and I don't care about your reference customers. I care about how I should use your product or your service. I care about the actual routines that I can develop, the changes I can make. And so when I hire and train salespeople or even customer success people, it's like no one cares about your features. They may want a demo, but they really want to know how they're going to go out and do their job better or more effectively. And so I really need to understand my target buyer, not so I can trick them or sell to them, but so I can understand what they're actually trying to accomplish. And then I can highlight the areas of my product or service that can support their mission. And so my big thing about really knowing your buyer, it's not just like, where do they hang out and what types of mediums can you communicate through, right? It's not that. It's what are they really trying to accomplish and how can you support them to make them more successful in their careers? Because ultimately, right, they're successful in their career. They're a high performer for their company. And so that is the best way to service your customers, is to make your buyer persona really successful in their function. And then, you asked about how do I...
the research piece, right? It's one thing to just sit down in a room and we've all talked with 15 or 30 or 50 of them. And so we just start making up some persona. You go a little bit farther than that.
I do. So the first thing I do is I'm going to pitch. I use my product. I drill down on certain people. We record all the calls, and then I listen to what the prospects and the customers say to us, and I sort that by role. And so when a head of enablement leverages Chorus to train their sales team, what are they talking about? What are they asking for? When a head of sales uses Chorus to inspect and enforce methodology or process, what are they talking about? What do they care about? When an executive team builds these listen parties where they're going in there and trying to mine the calls for insight into what the customers need, what do they care about? What are they thinking about? And so that's one thing I do is I really listen intently to our recorded calls. The other thing that I do is I actually send all of my ICs to school. And so we sell a lot to sales enablement. So I send every IC at my company to Sales Enablement Academy. It's run by Misha McPherson from Humble Grit Sales. She's affiliated with Matt Cameron from Sassy Sales Management. She runs a 2-day workshop. And so if you have a new in their career sales enablement leader, you send them to Misha's school. She's a 20-year sales enablement veteran, and she'll teach your sales enablement person how to run sales enablement. And so I send all of my AEs and all of my CSMs, I send them to her school so they can actually understand what it takes to do sales enablement. So when they're doing these calls, they're not pitching features. And when the customer success team is doing their calls, they're not just promising the roadmap. They're actually in line with what their end user is supposed to accomplish because they were educated on it and they get the role. When I was at Insight Squared, we sold a lot to RevOps, and we sold, reporting, BI, data. And so I would send my reps to Salesforce. I'd get them Salesforce certified. And so every time I take a new gig, what I'm trying to figure out is who's the buyer, what are they trying to accomplish, and how can I get my people to really understand that role in that world, because it's different. They've never done it before.
I love it. It's a huge value add, obviously, for your team members, because who doesn't want to learn and grow in a variety of ways? But it's also a huge value add to the customer because you can just get there faster. It's so good. So you mentioned sales enablement a couple of times. You've also mentioned to me sales readiness. Talk about, give just a lightweight definition of sales enablement and or a lightweight definition of sales readiness. What's, to someone like me who's a little bit a step away from all of this in a data, you're obviously steeping yourself and your team in sales enablement. For the more ignorant among us, myself and any of the listeners that fit my criteria here, what's the difference between those two, and what is the nuance or evolution that sales readiness brings?
Yeah, I think it really comes down to the company that you work for. This is an emerging category. I think back to the Salesforce admin and how over the last decade that's kind of transformed itself into global worldwide VP of operations and strategy. And you've kind of seen that role really morph and take shape. And it's because we moved our sales teams inside and started buying these inside sales, tech stack. And so that captures a lot of data. And as we started to do that more and more, these companies realized if I could have somebody on staff that could harness that data and help us make better decisions, we'd be a better company for it. And so the sales ops role has really kind of expanded and grown in importance. And I think now the next frontier of efficiency is how do I get my humans skilled quickly, and appropriately. And so I think a lot of companies now are starting to invest in enablement and readiness sooner, and they're building bigger teams, and they're really doing it with a metrics or data-driven approach. So they're tying the coaching initiatives to behavior change, to revenue improvement. And I think what we're seeing now is just kind of, there is a standard. And so when I was at Insight Squared, I did sales enablement, but my title was VP of Inside Sales. And so I really think you're kind of just looking at a role that hasn't really been fleshed out. But the ultimate goal here is, what does it take for a seller to be productive, autonomous, reliable, consistent? And what are all the things that come into that? Do they understand their tech stack? Do they have their territory? Do they do the right activities? Are there gaps in your process where technology or training could support it? And then what are the skills that they have to have? And the enablement and readiness function at your company needs to have a really detailed list of those items that a seller needs. And they have to have a plan to get them there quickly. And the ultimate measurement here is time to productivity and productivity per person. And the mantra is to go out there and improve those two stats.
Today's growth story is about Matillion, an industry-leading provider of cloud-based data integration solutions for platforms like Amazon, Snowflake, and Google BigQuery. Even though Matillion is a high-profile company, they needed to increase their organic traffic and conversions, so they turned to Directive. The Directive team grew Matillion's digital presence by concentrating on brand awareness, link building, and conversion rate optimization. leading to more visitors and longer time spent on Matillion's pages. Matillion saw a 2,750% increase in MQLs in just a single quarter. Not only that, organic conversions hit 164% compared to the previous quarter. And if you want to learn how to drive these kinds of results, you need to check out their digital marketing course, Institute. The Institute course teaches you step by step, click by click, all the necessary skills required to launch your own successful digital marketing campaigns. Sign up today at directiveconsulting.com/institute and to get your first 4 lessons completely free. Once again, that's directiveconsulting.com/institute to get 4 free lessons. All right, let's get back to the show.
So, you've built and trained a number of teams, and I would just love a drive-by on, I feel like that's a little bit of a look at the present into the future. But, as you think about situations you've either walked into or heard about, what are some common errors? Not situations where, you just have a bad manager that's not investing in their people. I mean, that's the obvious stuff. But what are some tweaks that like a solid performing team, if they could just make a few tweaks or look at a couple different things that they could maybe see some outsized jumps relative to the effort?
Yeah, I think it's about repeatable, scalable behaviors. And all too often, you've got the head of the department, typically head of sales, who knows how to sell really well. And it's kind of like, hey, everyone, gather around so I can dispel my gospel to you. And it's like, you're training like Socrates and Plato, right? The world has changed. The way people interact and consume information has changed. Yet you're still standing up there lecturing at people. And so I think it really comes down to use some technology and build some repeatable processes where, a weekly film review or reps peer reviewing one another, or, building out libraries of calls where new hires can go and self-serve the information, leverage an LMS, right? And so it's about doing things on a regular basis with intent, just building a structured program. Let's get away from the Monday lecture from the head of sales. And then the other 2 big categories, Ethan, sorry to drone on this one.
No, this is great.
Yeah. The other 2 things I hear a lot are not having a stated opinion, right? And so if you hire folks and then they succeed or fail based on how good they are at sales, you're kind of doing yourself a disservice. The best companies that I've worked with have a very defined point of view on all things. What is our mission? What is our pitch? What is the talk track? What is our methodology? What do you owe in the CRM? What emails, what customer facing content do we send to people? And having it all really, really locked down in a way that it's consumable, it's bite-sized, and it's where the reps need it. So for example, I leverage Guru to put my knowledge base for my sellers inside of Salesforce, inside of Gmail, inside of Outreach, and everywhere my seller might go, they have access to the information when they need it, where they need it. So that's a big, big piece. And then the final piece is the frontline manager. This happens all too often, right? You're the top seller, so you get promoted to manager, and then you revert to what you know. And so they go work deals, right? They take over deals, and maybe they give some advice in passing right after a call. But these frontline managers were not onboarded the right way. They were not trained the right way. They've never been coaches or teachers in their life. They're just good ICs. They get promoted to management, and you don't go invest in them again. You don't send them back to school. You don't tell them they have a new job, right? And they revert to what they know. They just go coach deals again. You really have to invest in this layer of frontline managers, because otherwise, again, it's the head of sales or the head of enablement kind of screaming out to the reps how to do it, but no one's out there after reinforcing it and making sure that reps understood it.
Yeah, it's so good to hear you say that. I've seen that happen a number of times. It even happened to me in a different role. The situation where the top performer or a really good performer now it becomes the manager who's responsible for 5 or 10 or 50 other people. But it's a completely different job. That job has little to no relationship. I mean, the one thing I prided myself on in that transition myself is I try not to ask people to do things that I'm not willing or able to do myself. It obviously helps that they've been in that seat. They've been there before. They can coach to it. They know what to listen to when they're listening to the recordings and what to feed back. But the whole rest of the job isn't the same job at all.
It's not even close. It's not even close. They say the best players don't always make the best coaches. This is no different, right? The best sellers do not always make the best managers. It's a different personality. It's a different set of responsibilities. And you could do it, right? You're a high performer. You can probably learn new things, but Not if we don't tell you to, right?
Right. Right. And it's the other thing I've experienced with maybe an up and coming, solid performing employee, whether it be a salesperson or another one, is that they maybe think that that is what they should do. Like that is the next logical step. I should, I'm killing my numbers. I've been at the worst I've performed in the past 12 months is 120% of quota. My next step is I should become a sales manager. But a lot of times, maybe you shouldn't, to your point.
I've had a lot of really honest conversations with ICs on my team over the years. And a lot of times I'm giving them advice to leave the company if that's what's right for them. And they think the only path for them is to now manage an SMB team, right? Well, maybe the right for them is go be an enterprise seller. And to do that, they might have to leave your org. And so I'm really invested in what's right and best for the people that I work with, because these relationships matter to me. And so, no, I don't think management is always the next step. I think that there are some other things you might do in your selling career before you try to go down that path. And I think we owe it to the people that we work with. No one's going to retire at BombBomb or at Chorus. Like no one's going to retire here, right? And so let's give them the life that they want. And, believe it or not, it'll reward you more than you might think.
That's great. I always ask this question of people who are so steeped in their area of expertise as you are, because, one of my goals on the podcast is to create better alignment and more open conversations, specifically across marketing, sales, CS, but really throughout the organization. Is there anything that you wish more marketers or customer success professionals understood about sales, the practice of sales, or anything like that? Is there, like, if you could be in a room of marketers and or a room of customer success or customer service professionals, what are a few things that you wish more of them knew or understood about what you and your team are trying to do every day?
Don't you get me in trouble, Ethan. The first thing I would probably say is how much I appreciate them and rely on them, and we're a team, and I will not throw stones here.
No.
I think there's a bit of a misunderstanding a lot of times with folks that have not run sales teams. And they may say this program makes a ton of sense, or this decision is really obvious. Why don't they just do it? And I think that there's a bit of a lack of understanding how challenging it can be to change the behavior of an entire team of people who were probably interviewed, tested to make sure they have the personality profile that is not easy to change. And so we hire sellers because they're headstrong, determined, and they have a short memory when it comes to failure, and they're confident and they have conviction in their beliefs. And then we say, hey, I sent out a memo. Why aren't you doing it my way now? And it's really not effective. And so I think the one thing that other departments could do when working with sales is just think about that a little bit. And let's think about how many times you have to tell someone something before they really learn it, and all the different ways you can support and enrich and enable them to do that, versus just saying, well, we announced it at the Monday meeting, so what's wrong now?
Right. I love it. Yeah. It was the fourth bullet point in that email with 18 bullet points. And I don't know how you missed that. Yeah.
Right. But just to be clear, for Tammy and for Natalie, I'm absolutely in love with working with you folks. I wouldn't change a thing. I think we have a great relationship.
Yeah. That's good. I mean, they're just, we're off in our corners sometimes as good as we are about working across teams. I think what you offered there was really helpful. This has been great. It's loaded with fast facts and useful information. If you are trying to build a team or improve sales enablement, I encourage you to listen to some or all of this episode again, or check out the overview that I'm going to put up at bombbomb.com/podcast. And before I let you go this afternoon, Joe, I would love to know a couple things from you. First, I love to give you a chance to thank or mention someone who's had a positive impact on your life or career, and a chance for you to give a shout out to a company that you really appreciate or respect for the way that they deliver an experience for you as a customer.
Got it. I want to thank Fred Schilmover from Insight Squared. I was in manufacturing sales when I met him about a decade ago, and I joined his company as employee number 9. And he took a shot on me, and he gave me opportunities that maybe my resume didn't warrant. And I know I earned it. I know I worked really, really hard for him, and I got some good results for him. But I wouldn't be where I was today if it weren't for him. And he's one of the more caring and loyal, and he's a personal friend of mine. And he came to our wedding, and he cooked dinner for us the night before for 150 of our guests. And it really meant a lot to me, and we're friends for life. So that's one person that's had.
He sounds like an awesome guy and a great chef, apparently. And it really ties back to what you were saying before, right? Like you weren't going to retire at Insight Squared, but the time and investment and trust that he put in you and the opportunity he put in front of you is just obviously a lifelong value and benefit. So good. How about a company that that's top of mind for you?
Got it. So I met my wife at Insight Squared. She ran event marketing while I ran the sales team, and us problem solving together is where we really got to know each other. And I'll promote her new company. I don't know if people have heard of it or not, but she works at a company called AWS or Amazon. And the one thing that I will say about AWS is she came home during her onboarding and on a daily basis commented just how customer obsessed, customer centric they are. And they preach it all the way through. And she said it's at a point now where if there are two people in a room at Amazon debating or trying to work their way through a hot topic, at some point, somebody in the room will always say, well, what's best for the customer? And that's the trump card. And that's what they go with. And so they live it and they really, really subscribe to it. And I know Bezos is famous for talking about it all the time, but customer obsession and customer first behavior is really important to me. And I really think they exemplify it. I really do.
So good. And this link between the employee experience, where it's very obvious that this is a real value, it's not lip service, is what begets an excellent customer experience. Joe, this has been awesome. If someone wants to follow up with you or connect with you or with Chorus, where would you send anyone?
Yeah, I mean, I'm Joe Cap Software on Twitter. I'm Joe Caprio on LinkedIn. I'm Joe at Chorus.ai. Check our stuff out. We do some good content. We just released the State of Conversation Intelligence. It's on our website. We took like 300 of our most famous customers and 5 million of their sales calls, and we started to analyze them to find benchmarks of like, what does it take to win a deal or lose a deal, and how many questions are your top sellers asking? And then you can actually slice and dice the analysis free based on your ICP or your, target audience or whatever. And it's really, really powerful. So go to Chorus.com and look for the State of Conversation Intelligence report, or hit me on any one of the channels. Like we all live in the same places here. So.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time. I have 2 new items on the top of my to-do list this afternoon. One is to go follow you on Twitter. We're already connected on LinkedIn, and I need to go check out that report and share it with some folks that I work with.
Excellent. Ethan, thank you so much, man. I really, really do love talking to you. I love your company. So thanks for having me.
Thank you so much. I always love asking that question. What do you wish more marketers knew or understood about sales and the sales process? And I ask it, depending on my guest, all different directions: CS to sales, sales to marketing, marketing to CS, and so on. Because this podcast is all about aligning sales, marketing, and CS to create and deliver a better experience for our customers. If you want more conversations like this one, visit BombBomb.com/podcast. That's the word bomb twice, BOMB.com/podcast. You'll meet other great leaders like Joe who are engaged in this ongoing conversation and this ongoing effort. I hope you'll join us. My name is Ethan Beute, Chief Evangelist at BombBomb, and I appreciate you listening to the B2B Growth Show.
I hate it when podcasts incessantly ask their listeners for reviews, but I get why they do it, because reviews are enormously helpful when you're trying to grow a podcast audience. So here's what we decided to do. If you leave a review for B2B Growth in Apple Podcasts and email me a screenshot of the review to james@sweetfishmedia.com, I'll send you a signed copy of my new book, Content-Based Networking: How to Instantly Connect with Anyone You Want to Know. We get a review, you get a free book. We both win.